Today is going to be adding single sign-on to your Microsoft Teams bots using Teams Toolkit for Visual Studio Code. If you've been following along over the last few weeks, you know that I've been kind of covering bots, the different types of bots, and it's been very much kind of getting started. So I wanted to kind of go to the next step of, okay, now you've got your bot. How can you add single sign-on to call APIs like the Microsoft Graph? So that's what I'm going to go through with you today. So a little bit about me. My name is Garry Trinder. I'm a cloud developer advocate at Microsoft. I am on Twitter. If you're still on Twitter, get me at Garry Trinder. I'm on all different socials as well. So check out my link tree, and you'll be able to find me on whatever platform you're on. Quick recap for today. So I'm going to go through the steps of how you can add single sign-on to a command bot project. So we're going to go through setting up that auth flow, implementing the command, updating the configuration of your bot, and then show that actually running and show you what the user flow is like for authenticating users in your bot to then call the Microsoft Graph API. Like I mentioned, if you've not been following along the last few weeks, and this is the first time you've heard of Teams Toolkit, just a bit of a recap. So Teams Toolkit for Visual Studio Code is a Visual Studio Code extension that you can install from the marketplace. This provides lots of functionality to create Microsoft Teams apps. Makes it easy to create, debug, and then publish those apps into your Microsoft 365 tenant and then into Azure and then running in production. So that's the slides done. We're going to get into the code and we're going to basically go through all the steps that you need to follow to add SSO. Okay, so I'm going to go into Visual Studio Code. So just to kind of set the scenes of the basis of this demo, I'm going to show an app that I've already built, a command bot that I've already created. I've done this by going through Teams Toolkit, create a new Teams app, and I've used the command bot template. And I've used TypeScript. I've basically generated it, which has ended up with a new project, which is base project. So it comes with a bot that has a command called Hello World, and we have an adaptive card which gets rendered when you send in Hello World. I'll just show you that I've already got this running. I've done the F5, and I'm just run Hello World. And I should get a response of an adaptive card. So that is running, but it's completely disconnected. It's not using SSO. So let's go through the steps of if you then wanted to create a command to call Microsoft Graph, for example. So one of the features in Teams Toolkit, if we open it up from the sidebar, is we have add features. And in here, there's numerous features that help you add resources to your project, like Azure Functions, SQL databases. One of the options is single sign-on. We've also got API connections as well, which we might cover in another session. But today we're going to focus on single sign-on. So I'm just going to click that. And we've got a README in front of us with some instructions, but you'll notice in the source control, there's been some changes that have been made to our project. So let's just see what's actually happened there. So we see lots of files that have been changed. If I go into the Explorer view, it might be easier to see what has actually changed. You can see the orange files. So we've had some configuration changed for our project. We've had some I go into that view, yeah, be able to see it. So we've had some information about client IDs and secrets, tenants, and also authority hosts that we'll need for authentication. It's been an update to projects just to say that, yeah, this is now a SSO enabled bot. Our toolchain, I guess our F5 debugging process, that's been slightly updated with a new task for setting up SSO. And we've got a few other files that have been added in for us. So we've got README, which is this file here, which contains all the instructions to follow to add in single sign-on, which I'm going to go through and actually show you all of the steps. If I go back to Explorer, we've got a new folder called auth. In this folder, we have some assets. So we have a public folder, which contains some HTML files. So these are the HTML files that are going to get invoked when our bot when our bot command is invoked. It's going to need to call out to Azure AD to get a token, and these two files are going to help that that flow, so that we can request and then receive a token back. And we've also got an SSO folder, which have a couple of examples as well. So there's an example for a command handler for a bot. There's also an example for a messenger extension as well. I'm not going to cover the messenger extension today, but we're going to cover the command handler. And if I just open this, you'll see that there's an example already pre-given. But what I wanted to do is just explain all of the elements of this file and all the kind of the moving pieces by actually implementing a command from scratch that uses SSO. We've also got a new template file in here as well. So we've got Azure AD, because our bot now needs to have identity, authentication, properties added into Azure AD. We can see that there's a template provided where we can add in what scopes we actually want to provision as well. So we've just got user readers as an example, but actually, you wanted to add more scopes in there. You can come into here and you can add them for your provisioning. Okay, so I'm just going to stop the bot that I had running. And let's go through the steps to actually set up our authentication flow. So first step is we have this public file, folder, and we need to move this into our source directory. So super simple, just drag it in and move it. That's that first step done, really quick and easy. What we also need to do is we need to update our bot. So if we go to the index file, so in here our bot is using a Restify server in its implementation. Currently, it doesn't know how to serve these HTML files when they're actually requested. So we have to add in a server get method. So we're going to add that in there. And we're going to import the import path. And we're going to save that file. So essentially, this is just saying that if there is a request for a HTML file with auth dash and the wildcard there for the start, it's going to serve that up from this this server. Next step is we need to make an update to our package.json file, and we need to update the build step. So in this build step, what this is doing is just making sure that we're including our HTML files that we've got in the public folder into our build. And then the final step is we need to make sure that we handle any errors. So in here we have our post handler for the API messages endpoint. So this is where all the communication between our bot and the bot framework is taking place. We just simply need to add a catch to the end of this, just to trap any user authentication errors, so that we can handle them a little bit more gracefully. I needed to replace all of that. And that is it. So our bot now actually has been set up for SSO. What our next step is we can now just go and create a command in our bot to leverage this new functionality. So let's go and do that now. So in this example, what we're just going to do is create a new command called profile. It's going to go off to the Graph API. It's going to pull back my profile information, and it's just going to get rendered in an adaptive card to display that back to the user. So first of all, let's create a new adaptive card. So profile command, and super simple. I'm just going to paste in this card. So just show the display name of the user and then a fact set of some individual properties. So let's save that. Okay, so we're going to create a new command now. I'm actually going to create a new folder called commands. I'm going to move my hello world command handler into there. So just tidy it up and create a new command, which is going to be profile command handler. Okay, so if you followed in previous weeks, you know, for a command handler, we would implement from an interface which was TeamsFX bot command handler. Well, there's a new one which is bot SSO command handler. So we're going to implement from this. I'm going to pull that in from the TeamsFX library. It looks very, very similar to our standard command. We've got our trigger patterns at the top. Our handle command received has an extra property which provides a token response. And it's inside here that we actually get our token to use. I'm just going to make this async. And I'm going to update our trigger pattern so that when it sees the word profile, it knows to actually trigger this code. Okay. So now we have our command. When it runs, what we need to do is we need to set up our identity. And there's in TeamsFX library. So this is going to handle a lot of the complexities for our authentication. Get our SSO token, and we create a new instance of TeamsFX. I'm just going to import that library. And then we can use the create Microsoft Graph client. So we can pass in our TeamsFX instance and the scopes that we want to use for this request, which would be user.read. For our client. Import that. So now we have a client which is using the Microsoft Graph JavaScript SDK. We can then make a request to the graph. And that's all set up ready so that when we make that request, our token is going to be sent to Microsoft Graph from our bot, and all that authentication is going to be handled. Now, before I do that, there is one thing that you'll need to do. So the Microsoft Graph JavaScript SDK client actually needs a package to be installed, which is the isomorphic fetch package. So change into your bot source directory and run this command to just install the package. And once that has finished, we can just import that into the command handler to make sure that the SDK has everything it needs. Okay, so we've set up our TeamsFX instance with our SSO token that we've got back from the bot framework. We've set up a client, and then we're making a request. So with that data that we return, we want to render that data in our adaptive card. So let's just bring in the import for our adaptive cards. And we'll bring in our profile card as well. So the adaptive card we created in here. So we're going to render the card next, passing in the data that we've retrieved from the graph. And then we're going to return that card back to our bot. I'm just going to import these from Bot Builder and save that. Okay, so far we've set up the auth flow. We have created a command and an adaptive card and implemented the logic to call the graph and return that data in an adaptive card. The next step is we need to tell our bot that actually it's now SSO enabled. We have an SSO command that we want to use with it. So if we come to the initialize file, so in here, this is where our bot configuration is. We can add in a new property called SSO config in here. So we can pass in the actual scopes that we want to use with this as well. So this will be the when there is the prompt for authentication. This is the scope that will need to be approved. And then in the command property, we have a new array property that we can add in our new SSO commands, which is the profile command handler. And bring that into there. So that set everything up on the bot side. The final step is now to update our manifest and actually provide some like a tooltip to the user when they're in the compose message box. So in here, if we go to our template and we go to our manifest, so in here we can add our new command, which is going to be profile, and that's just going to return the user profile. Okay, so that is now ready. So let's run our bot. I'm going to use the run and debug. So hit F5 if you'd like to. This is just going to set everything up. It's going to run the services. Just going to make sure that everything there is ready. So just take a few moments whilst this happens. So just wait for the bot to start up. There we are, the debugger's attached. And then we have a new window. We can sideload our app. The same app that we had before. And now we have our profile option there. So when I submit this, what will happen is we'll get a prompt. There we go. So this is the consent dialog. If I click continue, we get the window. We can see what permissions are being requested. So I can accept this. Wait for a second, the code has actually been returned there. Demo gods this week are not proving kindly. Let me just refresh this. Let's try this again. What a time for everything to go slow. Let's quickly just jump back to the code. Yeah, I've not got any breakpoints running. Live demos. Still got a couple of minutes left. So I should have time just to redo this, I think. Just close this down and let's rerun that. There we go. It actually worked. I'm not sure what happened there with my browser, but the consent actually went through. So now we can actually see that it's gone to the Graph API. It's pulled back my details, and it's actually rendered that into the card. So you noticed as well, I didn't have to log in either. So it just knew that I'd already consented and got a token. It was able to do that nice and silently in the background. So that's a nice feature of using this approach. If I go back to the code. So in terms of other commands that you might have, so like the hello world command handler, so this default one, it uses the TeamsFX bot command handler interface. If you want to then just simply add in a call to this, update the handler to the SSO handler, and then you'll be able to get back the token response, and then use that token response in your logic, call the graph, and upgrade those commands that you might have already created. And with that, I'm going to go back to the slides. So from what we've just been through today, so Teams Toolkit makes it easy to add those SSO assets to your bot projects. Just use the add features and select the single sign-on option. So it gives you the HTML files and the guidance as well. So there's the README there and the steps to actually follow to add that SSO to your bot, or to actually a message extension as well, if you're looking to build a message extension. And just in general, that TeamsFX there is really simplifying working with authentication, and actually making it really easy to get access to that token, and then make those graph calls as well. Once your bot's been set up for SSO, it's very easy then to just create more commands and make use of that flow really easy by just using the TeamsFX instance, and being able to generate clients from that TeamsFX library. So where to go next? There's tons of resources. I'll put some links in the chat as well. If you've not built any bots using Teams Toolkit, definitely check out the videos that we've done in the previous weeks in this call as well. So covering notification bots, command bots, and most recently workflow bots as well. And there's also guidance in the docs about adding single sign-on to your Teams apps, whether that is a bot, whether that's a tab as well. All the areas are covered. And with that, back to you, Facer.
Garry, before you stop sharing, just the one question. There's a great question from Andy. All end users would need to do the consent one by one, or is there an option to do this as an admin consenting? Just good question, actually.
That is a great question. I believe there is an option in the Teams Admin Center to enable that. Off the top of my head, I believe that there is. I can check and I can get back to you on that one. But that is a great question.
Yep, that is a good question to make the installations as seamless as possible. But